Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Town of Los Gatos Joint Town Council Parking Authority meeting for February 19th, 2013. Before we begin, I will ask all of you to please, if you have your cell phones and smartphones with you, if you will put them on silence. Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Thank you and good evening. Councilmember Joe Przinsky.
Here.
Councilmember Marcia Jensen.
Here.
Councilmember Diane McNutt. Here. Vice Mayor Steve Leonardis.
Here.
Mayor and Chair Barbara Spector.
Here. As is our custom, every week, every meeting, we have a stellar student join us up here to lead the flag salute. So this evening, I am going to ask Laura Pedrati to join me up here. I like to have the stellar student come up so you can see who I am talking about. And let me start out by asking you, Laura, is it Pedrati or Pedroti?
Pedrati.
Pedrati, all right. Laura Pedrati is a senior at the Harker School. She participates in public forum debate at school. She is a member of DECA Business Club. DECA prepares emerging leaders and entrepreneurs for careers in marketing, finance, hospitality, and management in high schools and colleges around the globe. It was previously known as Delta Epsilon Chi and Distributive Education Clubs of America. She is a member of the JCL Junior Classical League Latin Club and historian of her school's chapter. She has volunteered, and this makes her very popular around here. She has volunteered in the town clerk's department since 2010, and everybody over on this side tells me that she does a marvelous job. She tutors middle school students in math at Kip Hartwood Academy, helps at her school's open houses. She has interned at Vortex, a clothing manufacturer in Malta, over the summer. She loves yoga, hiking, traveling, watching films, listening to music. She loves languages. She has studied French and Latin in school. She self-studied in Italian. Now, this part gets cooler and cooler. She's looking to study economics in college, possibly abroad. She already has been accepted to the University of Exeter and University of Bristol in England. A round of applause. Now, if you'll please stand, I'll have her lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Another round of applause, please. I should have her stay up here and help me out for the next agenda item. In any event, the next agenda item at this time in our meeting and in this time of each year, it is the privilege and honor of the mayor to present to the community, to the council, to staff, the State of the Town message. Now, I want to put this in a little bit of context. This is the State of the Town message generally for the year 2013. But the context within which I want to place it goes back just a little bit. I was elected by the council as mayor in November of 2012. At that time, as the newly elected mayor, I was given the opportunity to say a few words. And I did. And what I said is, we needed to be prepared in 2013 to roll up our sleeves because this town has a lot of work to be done in the coming year. That was said on November 19th, 2012. On December 17th, 2012, I placed Templar on the agenda. Then we had our holiday break. Our very first meeting of the new year of 2013 was on January 22nd, 2013, when our main agenda item was what we call AHOS, the Affordable Housing Overlay Zone. The chambers were full. You say, well, we've had full chambers before. We had the overflow in the lobby. You'll say, we've had the overflow in the lobby. Not like this. There were chairs placed out there because the lobby was entirely full. There was a large screen television back there so that the folks out in the lobby could follow the proceedings and could therefore be prepared to come forward when their names were called on the cards. And their names were called, 45 of them. And at 11:15 that evening, the meeting was completed and the council unanimously decided to send the recommended overlay zone back to the General Plan Committee for reconsideration. Then, our next meeting, February 4th, 2013. Once again, the chambers were full. And so there were chairs out in the lobby for the folks to sit down, and once again, there was a large screen television so that they could follow the proceedings and come forward when their names were called on cards. But this time, the old library was filled with chairs, and remainder of the overflow crowd filled up the old library with another large screen television. So once again, these people could follow the proceedings, and when their names were called, had time to come forward. And their names were called. 85 people testified on February 4th, 2013. And at 12 o'clock midnight, this council adjourned the meeting until the following week, February 11th, 2013. And just 1 week ago, this council completed that portion of its hearing on Templar and the Templar and gun control. We are now just 1 week past that. And when I said on November 19th, 2012, we need to roll up our sleeves and get work done, what I realized after February 11th, 2013, is we need to roll them up further and get even more work done, because that's how this year is going. Because so many people are interested in so many issues in our town, we on the council get letters, we get emails, lots of emails. We get emails, we get input from staff. And so we are aware of the issues that rise to the top of interest for the people in our community. And so I wanted to take the opportunity this evening to give you an update on these various issues. As I said, the Templar-related gun control issues will come back on March 4th. Specifically, what we will be discussing at that time is whether or not to enact a moratorium while we consider in the future gun retail stores, gun control. So that'll be March 4th, but that is just to consider a moratorium. The AHOS, the overlay zone that I was telling you about before, that is going back to the General Plan Committee From the General Plan Committee, it will then go to the Planning Commission and to the Council. We expect it to be in public hearings in the spring or summer of this year, of 2013. And there were a lot of people here who were concerned that they didn't know about General Plan Committee meetings. Well, I'm telling you right now, there will be General Plan Committee meetings on this issue. The General Plan Committee meetings are open to the public, and you are invited to attend. Another issue that has been getting a lot of attention over the past year or years is Hillbrook School. And Hillbrook School has two components to the concern that we hear from the community. One has to do with the conditional use permit that Hillbrook School currently has. There are members of the community who think that it is being violated. Hillbrook says that it does not. That issue, which we are calling CUP interpretation, will be before this council on March 18th. The other component of Hillbrook School has to do with Hillbrook moving to amend or change its modify its conditional use permit. It's going through the environmental assessment right now. That should be back before the council in the fall of this year, of 2013. Next big issue, the North 40. That has been a big issue for many years, but it's getting bigger because we're getting closer, I think. And we'll be working on the North 40 specific plan this entire year. Right now, a draft plan will be sent back to the North 40 Advisory Committee, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in a second. From the North 40 Advisory Committee, it will go to the Planning Commission and then to the Council. We anticipate that that process will take the entire year. At every step of the way, Planning Commission, Town Council, and the North 40 Advisory Committee, they are public meetings. You can attend, you can speak if you wish. The North 40 Advisory Committee, I chair that committee. It's made up of representatives of the council, of the Planning Commission, of other commissions, and of the community. We have 15 people on that North 40 Advisory Committee. Because we need this much room, we have the meetings in this room so that we can use the dais for those people on the committee. Everyone else who attends sits out there where you are now. And again, you have the opportunity to speak at the North 40 Advisory Committee meetings, just as you do at the Planning Commission and at the Town Council. The last item that I have on this list of high-profile items has to do with Albright Way. The Albright Way offices are coming forward again. The applicants have put their draft EIR out for comment. You can find information about that on our town website. But we anticipate that that will be back before us, I think, sometime in the summer of this year. So, Templar, March 4th, the AHOS in the spring or summer of 2013, Hillbrook School CUP interpretation, March 18th, CUP modification in the fall, the North 40 all year, Albright Way in June. Now, those are what I consider the large, they're all land use issues, and they are what I would consider for us this year significant land use issues. However, as part of the state of the town, I wanted to share with you or go over with you budget issues. Now, there is a relationship between the budget and the land use issues. And again, I wanted to step back in time a little bit and put this in perspective. I had the opportunity and privilege of being mayor in 2008. And I had the opportunity and privilege of giving a State of the Town address. And that was in January of 2008. Now think about when this is, January of 2008, not too long after 2007. And so what I said at that time was that Los Gatos would be resistant but not immune to the financial situation going on. Now, I didn't really know what this financial situation was going to be. As it turns out, resistant but not immune, and I'll go over that with you, turned out to be a very accurate assessment of Los Gatos. What I did not anticipate, and I don't think anyone did, is the duration of that financial challenge. In Los Gatos, our revenues since 2008 and going through now have remained fairly consistent. There's been very little deviation in our revenue generated each year from 2008 to 2013. However, our expenses have increased, our fixed expenses, and that's mainly due to pensions, which are fixed, and post-retirement employee benefits. So, if our revenue is remaining constant and our fixed expenses are increasing, we have a delta there that we have had to address. And we have addressed this shortfall with budget efficiencies, such as furloughs, salary freezes, and reorganizations. However, because we have had to do all of those things, it has reduced our bandwidth, our ability to deal with new issues as they come forward. That resulted in November, when I met with staff after being selected as mayor, that resulted in staff showing me a pending work plan that was in excess of 30 items that were supposed to have been addressed because of ordinances, because of general plans, because of directives from council, but had not yet been addressed. They included items such as the alcohol policy, the entertainment policy, proactive code enforcement, a process for addressing complaints of CUP violation, Almond Grove street repair, review of the downtown parking assessment district, interface with other West Valley cities on issues such as plastic bags, leaf blowers, dedicated charging stations, and a review of the use in our town of planned developments. Each of these items, because we haven't addressed it, causes uncertainty. It causes uncertainty for the people in the community. It causes uncertainty for staff that has to deal with the issue. It causes uncertainty for the Planning Commission. It causes uncertainty for the council. Because there are not clear policies and because there is uncertainty, that uncertainty wastes time, and time is money. And so therefore this year it will be my goal to wipe all of those items off of our to-do list and get them done. If you were able to hear or pay attention to each of those line items that I went through, you probably understand that besides being a long list of items, it is a challenging list of items. That for each one of them, there are competing interests. That for each one of them, reasonable people will think differently. And so besides being a lengthy list, it is going to be a hard list for us to deal with, but we will. So then, are we having any fun this year? The answer is not much. However, there are two things, and one's already happened, and that is the love locks. The love locks were on the Main Street Bridge. They're all off the Main Street Bridge now. And so if you go over to the Art Museum on Tate, you will see that there are two gate-type structures there where people have adhered or locked their love locks. So you can go and look at other people's love locks, or you can, as my husband is going to do, buy a love lock and put your own on the bridge, or on the structure. The other thing that hasn't been done yet, and which we can anticipate for the spring, will be the reopening of Pageant Park. And so, what is the state of our town? As of today, within 1 month of the first council meeting of 2013, we have demonstrated ourselves to be an engaged community, engaged with the beautiful town in which we live. And throughout this year, I will expect our town will remain engaged, our town and the community will remain engaged with hard work, transparency, and integrity. Will it be challenging? Yes. Can we do it? Absolutely. I look forward to working with everybody in this room and everybody in the community. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. I know you clapped because it was fairly short. All right, the next item on our agenda is the closed session report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There was no closed session tonight noticed and no report.
Thank you. And anyone who wishes to address us this evening, if you'll please fill out one of these cards and give it to the clerk. I only have one so far. At this point, council matters. Is there anyone on the council? And I see yes, Ms. McNutt.
Thank you, Mayor. The mayor has asked us to report out when we attend regional meetings that we serve on, and I did go to the Santa Clara County Emergency Preparedness Council quarterly meeting last week, and a couple of things of interest. The county, all the cities in the county, including the West Valley cities, will be participating in an emergency training exercise on May 15th. And the scenario of that exercise will be that it's day 3. Should I wait?
I'm going to suggest that you wait, and actually I'm going to suggest that you sort of back up a little bit.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask people to please leave here if you're not going to listen to Ms. McNutt and the rest of us. Ms. McNutt, the floor is yours. And again, if you could back up a little bit.
Certainly. So this is a report on the Santa Clara County Emergency Preparedness Council meeting and 2 items of note for Los Gatos. On May 15th, all of the cities in the county, including the West Valley cities, will be participating in a training exercise on emergency preparedness. And the scenario is it will be day 3 after a 7.9 earthquake. And the focus is going to be on disruption of water and wastewater, my fondness for sewers coming in there, services. So we'll have more details. I'm not sure right now how much the town, if it'll be a site of activity, but I'll let you know on that. Also at that meeting, there was a best practices presentation by Sergeant Carrie Harris of our own police department on a program that they're doing of training for educators. And so it was very well received, and I was quite proud that Los Gatos was there represented as a best practice.
Thank you, and I do appreciate the fact that council is reporting out. I find it very helpful. Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Spector. In the last week, I also attended 3 meetings on behalf of the council, and I'm not going to go into as much detail as Councilmember McNutt, but I will tell you the 3 that I attended. One was for the Santa Clara County Water District and Flood Advisory Committee, and I serve on both of those committees on behalf of the town. Another was for the West Valley Sanitation District Committee, and the last was for the Housing and Community Development Advisory Committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Ms. Jensen.
And I also attended last week a meeting of the Valley Transportation Agency Policy Advisory Committee.
Mr. Przynski.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll report on three bodies that I have participated in the last couple of weeks. One is the League of California Cities Board of Directors meeting. We held it in Pasadena on the 7th and 8th. And League of Cities represents the 483 cities and towns of California. I have a handout of the League's focus for the council for the year. One of the major issues that the League is participating in right now is litigation in Sacramento regarding the dissolution of RDA. And there are a number of lawsuits that are coming forward to try to make amends or to do a recovery of what we lost in redevelopment agency throughout the state. And that is ongoing with the League. I'm also chair of the Valley Transportation Authority Board of Directors, and a couple of items that are on our agenda right now of importance, and this was at the beginning of this month. Vasona Light Rail is currently in its environmental study phase. That's that last 1.6 miles from the stop on Winchester near St. Lucy's to the Netflix building. Whether that is approved or not will depend on competition with a lot of other projects. In addition, I think it's something for our community to know that Highway 85 is earmarked for hot lanes that would run all the way from 101 to 101. And that could be, as far as I'm concerned, a real definite win. If you've ever been on Highway 85 in the morning commute or in the evening commute, you know how difficult it is. The last body I wanted to talk about is the Cities Association of Santa Clara County. It's the Mayor's Council or the Mayor's representatives on the council. One item that's I think important to us is going to be taken up is the whole question of sub-regional RENA options. That would mean that instead of each city or town being assigned its RENA number by ABAG, it's possible for a region or a county to act as a single body, and the distribution would take place locally. It doesn't mean the numbers would change in gross, but it does mean that it's more opportunity for cities and towns to reflect what their real characteristics are and have a better chance of evolving the numbers that are more appropriate. So that's my report on those three bodies.
Mr. Brzezinski, on that last point on RENA, if it goes to a more local venue, would it mean, for example, that Los Gatos could negotiate with San Jose to see if San Jose would take some of Los Gatos, know?
That's exactly what it would be. It's right now, San Mateo County has a sub-regional RENA body. And what they've done up there is that the cities that want more residential, such as Redwood City, are able to negotiate with Woodside, for example, to offset. And there would have to be a trade-off of some value that would allow that to occur. But it's a much more locally controlled environment than what we see right now.
Thank you. Anyone else on council for council matters? Thank all four of you very much. Manager matters.
No manager matters tonight, and there is no did you know due to the State of the Town speech.
I was did you know.
Did you know we're going to work hard?
All right, we now have the consent items to be acted upon by a single motion. Let me ask first, is there anyone from the council wishing to pull an item from the consent calendar? Seeing no one, I understand that we do have a member from the audience, Bonnie Williams, wishing to pull item 2 from the consent calendar. You don't need to come up yet, but is that accurate?
Not pull it, I want to talk about it. I want to give 3 minutes to say something nice.
All right, we'll still have to, that's nice, but we'll still have to pull it and get to it in just a few moments. All right, so we have agenda item 2 pulled, albeit for a nice reason. I'll look to the council for a motion. Mr. Brzezinski?
Move to approve the consent agenda, except for item 2.
Second? Mr.
second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. I would then ask, I will call Item 2, PPW job number 1005, Blossom Hill Road Improvement, Cherry Blossom Lane to Camino del Cerro. I'm assuming there is no staff report?
Staff is available to answer any questions that might arise.
All right, questions of staff, seeing none. Ms. Williams, can you come forward, please? And you'll have 3 minutes.
Did not know your definition of pulled. Actually, I've come here to compliment the town and a couple of your employees who worked on this project in front of my house. I think we're very lucky to have Kevin Rohani, hope I said that properly, and Melissa Hong, who worked on the project. I live on Blossom Hill Road, and I had a recommendation for several changes, and they're very professional, very nice, and very accommodating to what my changes were to the plan. So I just want to congratulate them for their fine efforts, and thank God we have them working for Los Gatos. So kudos to them. I guess basically that's all I came to say. Just thank you.
Well, thank you for coming in this nasty weather to say that. We appreciate it.
Well, we need that rain to drink, so never complain about it.
Thank you. All right, I now close the public testimony of the hearing and look to the council for a motion. Mr. Brzezinski?
Move to approve item 2.
A motion by Mr. Brzezinski, seconded by the Vice Mayor. Discussion, seeing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. All right, we are now at verbal communications, and again, if you want to talk with us on verbal communications, please submit one of these cards. We do have a card, Maggie Creighton. Ms. Creighton, if you'll come up here, you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi. I want to make this very, very brief, but I want to thank all of you city council members and city staff for hanging in the last 2 meetings because of the sort of split in our community on the Templar Sports getting their permit, etc. I just want to congratulate particularly you, Barbara, because you just kind of held us to an honest kind of real state of being, because so many of us were so fiery and so full of emotion about the Templar Sports. And I do want to encourage the staff and the council to remember that there is a lot of fire about this issue and to hang in with us, because as Barbara said, we're all very involved in this community. We love this community, and now we love the city council. At least I do. Thank you all for hanging in. There'll be more, so just remember that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else wishing to address us on verbal communications? I mean, this is such a good role. I think we'll keep it going. All right, seeing no one coming forward, we are at other business, which is agenda item 3, our fiscal year 2012-13 mid-year budget performance and status report, 6 months ending December 31st, 2012. I understand that the staff report will be made by staff members who will announce themselves.
Good evening, Mayor Spector, members of the council. My name is Jen Calloway. I am the new budget and finance manager. I've been with the town about 4 months now, so it's my pleasure to present to you our mid-year budget review. I can work this. The outline for our presentation tonight, we're going to go over our mid-year status report. Technical difficulties here. Our recommended budget adjustments, our 5-year forecast, our current budget development for fiscal year 2013-14 that we've started. At this point, the finance director, Mr. Conway, and I will take any questions you have regarding these issues, and then Mr. Larson and Ms. Jacobs will present the strategic goals and work plan. For the fiscal year 12-13 revenue adjustments, we're just highlighting a few for you. We have some good news. and some not so good news. We have some revenue increases that we'd like to recommend to the council. $642,000 increase in charges for services. This is primarily some new revenues that we're receiving, and as well as watching the trending. We're trending above our forecast for the year. Likewise, for licenses and permits, we have some increases in building and planning permits particularly that made us recommend this increase to you for $487,000. We have a $225,000 increase in Montessorino reimbursement. You'll see a corresponding expenditure increase for that as well. What that's for is increased costs related to the homicide investigation that we're asking Montessorino to reimburse us for. We have a $127,000 increase in the VLF property tax backfill, and that is based on the county estimates that they've provided to us. For the not so good news, we are recommending a $416,000 decrease in sales tax. A lot of these revenue decrease recommendations have some correlation to the dissolution of RDA, how that's affected our balances in terms of interest income, which you'll see in a couple of bullet points, as well as the result from the waterfall. This also has to do with our the change in business model from Netflix and how that related with the state correction and what they took from us. As I mentioned, the $471,000 decrease in interest income. As you all know, interest rates are very low. Our balances are lower due to amounts we paid out for the dissolution of RDA. So that's what's prompted that recommendation. And finally, a $173,000 decrease in general property tax, and this is based on estimates provided by the county. For our expenditures for the current year, we have cost reduction strategies that are still in place, particularly furloughs, staff redeployment. The good news is our expenditures are below 50% of budget. We're at about 48% of budget right now, so there possibly will be year-end expenditure savings. For our expenditure budget recommendations, some of the key recommendations we have, again, the $225,000 in homicide investigation costs that we are asking for reimbursement from Montessorino for, $70,000 increase in staff salaries, and $45,000 for code compliance, which is related to our code compliance program. For capital improvements, we have $50,000 for the Winchester-Lark intersection. This is for the design phase only. And the net total recommended adjustments are $364,000. So now Mr. Conway will present the 5-year forecast.
I'm going to suggest that before we go on to you, Mr. Conway, I'm going to see if there's any questions. Remind me what your name is again.
Jen Calloway.
Okay, if there's any questions from Ms. Calloway on her portion of the presentation. Yes, Ms. McNutt.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to clarify that when you say $70,000 in staff salary increases, that does not refer to actually more money. You're not getting a raise.
No.
Okay, so that's what's going to be heard. So if you could clarify what that is, that would be helpful.
It's actually directly related to the public safety realignment revenue that we'll be receiving. It's for the parolee realignment through the state, and it flows through the county.
Yeah, Councilmember McNutt, we're able to supplant the public safety budget. It's a budget increase. We're going to have some increased work, so there's going to be some grant funding available, so we're just able to add. We're not increasing any salaries. We're just making more public safety work, but budget available for that effort. So there's no salary increase. Just allows.
I understood that from the staff report, but that's not necessarily what was going to be heard. I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Other questions? Mr. Brzezinski.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Question on that Winchester-Lark reconstruction. We haven't seen anything that configures this at this point, correct? This is a new item for us to evaluate?
Yes, sir. This is the design phase only. What it ultimately is for is the I believe, if I'm correct, the construction of the northbound lane. It includes relocating the signal poles and redesigning the traffic signal system. But this is just design only at this point.
Okay. And the intention is to increase a lane on Winchester?
It's a new northbound lane.
The intention there is at least partially, perhaps more than partially, dependent on what happens in the Albright development, in that we'll have to change the way traffic flows through that intersection. And so it's not necessarily the expansion of the roadway, it would be a reconfiguring of that intersection from westbound Lark to northbound Winchester as you approach Highway 85. It's quite possible that the construction costs will not be borne by the town, but in order to do the proper calculations and how much credit would be given to a developer or not, we need to follow through with the design so that we can actually put an actual price tag on the scope of the work.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that. I could also ask about the sales and use tax, the 416,000 and change that we're feeling we're going to come under. You indicate partially that that's Netflix oriented because of this change of their business plan. But I've been under the impression that as the economy rebounds, that our retail has been rebounding in sync. Could you explain that a little bit?
Thank you for that question, Councilmember Brzezinski. The sales tax that's recommended tonight, the reduction, really results from the fact that last fiscal year, the state is about a year behind on their how they estimate. They give us advances on our sales tax. They estimate based on the prior year's collections. The town has advanced it advanced based on the 1 year history. So we were aware last year in fiscal year 11-12 that the state, if everyone can remember, the change in business model for Netflix occurred in fiscal year 11-12. We realized at that time that the state would probably be over advancing our sales tax because they are a year behind. So they're assuming that the Netflix business model would continue as scheduled. So when the year end of fiscal year end closed as of 12, we reversed approximately $900,000 of sales tax revenue that we received and said, we're going to defer that and we'll recognize it this fiscal year. The state, right as of through December 31, has charged us back for over advance $500,000. We're assuming that that will carry on because it's a year behind. We assume that will be approximately $1 million to $100,000, considering that it's been $500,000 through December 31. If they do the same reversals of sales tax for over advancing us money the year before, we'll be through this fiscal year, but we think it's probably going to be closer to $1 million or $1,100,000. We only deferred from the last year and recognized this year. It gets into, I apologize for the accounting part of this, but we deferred about $800,000 and moved it into this year. So we're $300,000 of the state will probably be shorting us $300,000 for the overpayment the year before. So it's just we were flying somewhat blind and had to make our best estimate, and the state is reversing more than out of our current revenues than we expected. So we're going to be down about $300,000. The good news is on our sales tax, leaving Netflix out of the picture, we're trending not as robust as the rest of the state, but we didn't take as bad a hit as the rest of the state. So we're trending on all of our non-Netflix revenue positively with the rebound. It's just that the state's reversal for their over advances has muddied the waters. So we'd like to strip that out. But this is just, the good news is that all the other revenues are trending positively, and they're built into our, and when I get to the forecast, I will be talking about that more.
Okay, if you don't mind, Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
See, I think it's really important that we clarify for our public what these numbers mean, because as gross numbers, they may not actually be reflective of the situation that we're in, particularly the accounting situation we're in, and sometimes you start to build a negative focus, and now there's an assumption that something's going wrong, when indeed probably some things are going really, really, really well, but we're being penalized in effect by
Yes.
state's mechanisms.
Yeah, the state is, I would say that the system for their apportionment of sales tax based on a year behind and trying to advance us what they think we will collect and then settling up a year later, that needs to be improved. But we're managing through it, and we did set aside $800,000. We probably should have set aside closer to $1 million. So you're right, Councilmember Brzezinski, that really muddies the water, because if we took that away and took that state correction away, we're actually trending positively pretty much across the board in all of our categories of non-Netflix sales tax producers in town here.
I think it's a really important message for us to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
That's right. We don't want to make my state of the town wrong. Okay, remember? We're doing fine. I'm going to follow up with Mr. Brzezinski on his questions. You guys talked about the sales tax. On the property tax, we're reducing that. And I'm assuming there were assumptions made last year in order to get to the projections. What assumption did we make, or what assumption or assumptions did we make that didn't hold true?
Mayor Spector, happy to answer that. On the property tax, the 12-13 budget that was adopted was based on the forecast. We established that number in May of 2012. That number was based on the forecast at that time from the county that we received. We received a monthly forecast, which had us forecasted to collect $8.1 million in 11-12. So the 11-12 assumed a 3.5% growth in 12-13, which got us to a new number. When we tallied up our property tax collections for 11-12, we were actually received $7.9 million. So we were $200,000 lower than what the county had estimated. So our estimate for fiscal year 12-13 was $200,000 too high. So this is a course correction because had we known that our actuals would have been $7.9 million, we would have increased that 1.3% and been at the new target that we're recommending tonight. The good news also on the county is that I just attended a property tax meeting with the County of Santa Clara, and we are trending very, very positively also in property tax. Had we been a little bit more, had we known exactly that we would have received $7.9 million, we would have increased the current year budget approximately 4%. We're growing at an average, our assessed value right now is growing at 4% on an annual basis, which is, we had 3.5 in our budget. So we're actually trending ahead of budget. It's just that the estimate the county gave us the year before, I apologize, it's a bit of a moving target. We think I think council has seen that we're in general pretty close with our estimates. It's just a bit of a moving target. The wild card that we deal with every year is property assessment appeals. We have 85 active assessment appeals in Los Gatos at this time. Those can be settled at any time by the assessor's office, either through an appeal process or through settlement. And those can happen any time, and those can be either semi-high magnitude numbers when people appeal their property values. So those are also factor into our property tax collections, and it's very unpredictable. We try to be as accurate as we can be.
All right, and then one more question on the interest income. What assumption or assumptions were made that caused this to be off to the tune that it is?
Okay, on the interest, Mayor Spector, on interest, we're recommending a reduction because when we made councils aware that with the closing of the redevelopment agencies, money had been transferred to the town about 2 years ago for the Public Improvements Cooperation Grant. That grant, we believe, established a valid obligation that the RD redevelopment would provide funding for various town capital projects. Through the dissolution process, the oversight board determined that those were not contractual obligations and ordered the first amount was $6 million of low and moderate housing monies to be returned to the county. That was done, I believe, in November. So we lost a large chunk of dollars that was available that was earning interest until we were not going to reduce our interest estimates in advance because we believe that there were contractual obligations that the RDA was committed for those projects, and we did not want to send any signals that we were going to be giving up the fight on that because we believed we had contractual obligations. So that's the bulk of the interest loss.
All right. I know that Mr. Conway has more to share with us, but any further questions at this point? Seeing none, Mr. Conway?
Thank you, Mayor Spector. I have some good news. In spite of what we've talked about, the various budget reductions in certain revenues, as Jennifer Callaway pointed out, we have had some strong recovery in our charges for services and licenses and permits. Those are our private development activity work that's going on. We have seen a very a strong rebound in that revenue. And as you can look at your fiscal year 12-13 results, the blue line this is what every finance officer likes to see, is that the revenue line is above the red line, which in the 12-13 we estimate right now. The good news that we have for the public is that we should finish the fiscal year. We had a balanced budget. If council remembers, we did approve $490,000 of one-time use of reserves for library hours and other selected council initiatives that were included in the adopted budget. The good news is you can see that there is an excess revenue above expenditures, and it does appear that we will not be utilizing that reserve. We will not have to touch that reserve that was authorized by council. We have sufficient revenues in the current fiscal year to more than balance. So that's one I consider piece of very good news for council. We should be able to keep our operating revenues. We'll be funding our operating expenditures for this fiscal year. As they did last year, by the way. 11-12 also finished with revenues slightly above, a couple $100,000 above expenditures, which was another good piece of news for the council. Fiscal year 13-14, the budget development that we're under right now, because of what Mayor Spector had talked about earlier in her State of the Town address, you can see that our revenue line, we have trended it in line with our actual receipts, and we believe next year that we will have a problem. You can see that the red line starts to trend above the expenditure line, trends above the revenue line by approximately $800,000. That is our challenge for next year that we're working on. That is approximately 2.5% of our operating budget. So all the departments are working actively right now on solutions for closing that gap. If we're able to close that gap with ongoing permanent reductions, that is what the red line signifies. You can see that we'll have continuing challenges the following year of another $1 million. These structural gaps are occurring primarily because of two reasons. One, as Mayor Spector mentioned, our pension rates are still increasing. We received the latest update. It was up 2% on our public safety and approximately 2% on miscellaneous employees. That's applied against a $14 million budget, so that's a significant dollar amount. That is not, we're not able to deliver extra services. It's just an extra cost that we have to absorb. And then we have retiree medical payments that are going out on an actuarial basis that increase every year until 17-18, and then they start to they hit a high point actuarially, and they start to decline after that. The good news, if you went out on a 10-year forecast, you would see our expenditures starting to go down. That's the good news. You don't see it yet because we haven't rounded that corner. We're in the point of time where we're actually putting money into our post-retiree medical trust account and building a reserve in there, and then that money is earning interest, and it starts to become more self-funding over time, just like a regular pension plan. But we're in the building stages right now, so we're going to have to fund for that. So the green line, we put that there just for council, that if we took no action and we decided that we would just solve our problem with reserve use, you can see that the gap would start to become sizable, and of course, that's probably not a solution that we would be recommending to council. So we would anticipate that we'll be working between the red line and the blue line each fiscal year as we go through. The good news is, I think we're fairly conservative on our revenue estimates from year to year. So we'll be updating this forecast as part of the budget development. There are some reorganizations that likely will take place during the budget development, other efficiencies that we'll discover through the budget process that we'll be building into the recommended 13-14 budget. And when we get some quantification of that, we will be building that into our 5-year and being able to show some of the good positive results that come out of an updated 5-year that we'll bring to council before we adopt the budget in May. So this is a point in time. It's going to change, but it's the best information that we have right now.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Conway? Mr. Brzezinski.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Conway, what happens in 2015-16 where we peak and then we start to fall? How do we get there? How do we get off?
Can you be a little bit more descriptive for me?
I don't know. I guess I'm looking at an increase that's relatively significant, without mitigations, and we see that there is a peak that occurs in the 2015 category, and then we start to drop again till we start to get almost close to even.
Yeah.
What's happening?
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Brzezinski. One of the forecasting is a bit of an art. In 15-16, we anticipate that the PERS rate on public safety will be nearly 50%. So for every dollar of public safety direct salary, there will be a corresponding 50-cent additional payment we will make to the California PERS, Public Employees Retirement System. We have factored in a growth that you'll see the exponential ramping up and then a flattening, because and this is just my own personal belief, but I don't believe that that we will see a recommended rate beyond a 50% rate from PERS. So what has happened is we've flattened that out at a maximum of 50%, because the PERS rates that are charged are usually 2 years behind. So there's an actuarial valuation that's done 2 years behind to set the rates, the current rates. So we've had a market rebound in the past 2 years. So I do have somewhat of a conservative nature. So I would expect that when the good market results hit, PERS will likely have some opportunity to lower the rate. So this forecast is pessimistic in that I think it may approach up to 50%. We're at 42% right now. But at 50%, I thought I didn't want to budget any higher rate that we would be paying than that. And as I told you, it is a bit of an art, but I've been doing this a while, so I think I'm fairly solid with it, but it's a great question. So it does hit 50, and then we see some of our other costs are starting to decline. Our forecasted post-retirement medicals do hit a peak. I believe it's in 16, 17, and they start to drop. So we start to see some closing of that gap. Were we, and that's the green line, were we to do nothing.
All right, then. I really appreciate that. So you're thinking 50% is a ceiling from PERS, and once we hit 50%, it won't continue to exponentially grow. It will ceiling and then start to drop because other funding will change the picture. We're completely dependent on what PERS decides it's going to charge us. Is that correct?
We are, but the one thing another reason why I thought 50% would probably be our peak is, as everyone remembers, we did have pension reform, which begins this fiscal year, January 2013. So all of our new employees that join the town are in a different system. So I'm expecting that 50% is likely going to be our peak cost. And we should see that number drop as more and more new hires in the new PERS system. So we have taken some proactive steps as a state to address this issue. So that's why in our crystal ball we feel that 50% is a solid upper limit, because we should start to see some trending the other direction.
And then finally, do you envision us using what you call shortfall mitigation? We will be doing that pretty much for the duration at this point, given the way you're projecting, correct?
We will be doing some form of shortfall mitigation, and that takes many forms. It can be furloughs, it can be reorganizations, it can be strategic hiring freezes, as Mayor Spector we've been doing this honestly for about 10 years. I don't expect the problem that we have, and Mayor so eloquently stated in her State of the Town, is that our revenues have remained, and it has been a lot of work by town staff to keep revenues. As everyone knows, we've had some rough patches, and to keep a stable revenue base these past 5 years has been a challenge in and of itself. And I think the town should be commended for that, because we haven't seen significant dips. We haven't seen significant increases, but we've held steady. Our problem is we've had some of these uncontrollable costs, and as long as those costs trend negatively, we're going to be having to use right-sizing efforts of some sort to keep the ship of state afloat and in good health. So, but I think I confess to being a bit conservative. I'm hoping that when I come forward with a next forecast, that we'll start to, when we can see the state, the effects of their overpayments and getting that cleared out and seeing what's our true new reality, that we can be a little bit more optimistic. And I'm hoping that that gap between the shortfall mitigation, the red line and the blue line, start to narrow. And I want to be positive and believe that that will occur. And of course, the more that we can do to contain uncontrollable costs through the efforts that the state and the league in concert with the state has made on our pension reform that started this year, those have all been great efforts. And I think that's going to start to help that trend and that narrow that gap. And as we recover just generally with all of our economic activity, I think hoping to be able to bring a forecast that's a little bit more optimistic in the future.
That would be lovely, but I think it's really important we stay conservative and be surprised at a certain point in time. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Brzezinski. Other questions for Mr. Conway? Mr. Conway, the floor is yours.
Okay, if there's no more questions on the 5-year forecast, then we were Jennifer Callaway and I are done with our part, and we were going to turn the presentation over to the town manager on the work plan.
Mr. Larson?
Mr. Conway has already talked about this. To put it in context to prior discussions, when you've received this first 5-year forecast for the last 5 years, we're always looking at budget gaps of $1.5 million or more. So it's actually down to what we think is a more manageable level of $800,000, and that's what we're working towards. To develop our budget for next year, we're using your prior prioritization from last year, where you evaluated $12 million worth of budget adjustments and put them in a tiered order. We will continuously update the revenue and expense projections with new information and fold in our continuing cost containment strategies to bring you in May recommended balanced budget for your consideration at that time. And now we're going to shift seats for the next part of the agenda. So besides the budget presentation by Mr. Conway and Ms. Callaway, we also wanted to update the council on the strategic goals matrix as well as the work plan that the mayor discussed earlier. And Assistant Town Manager Pamela Jacobs will do a quick overview of the 2 charts that were in your packet. And then mostly it's to hear from council questions and direction you have on moving ahead.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. We would first direct your attention to the strategic goals that were adopted about a year ago by the town council. These are strategic goals for a 2-year time period from 2012 and 2014. In the past, the council has typically reviewed these on an annual basis to see if any needed to be removed or if new priorities needed to be added. This year, there was no separate session planned to do that, so staff is taking this opportunity of the mid-year budget to bring this forward to you to see if there are any adjustments you would like to make to the strategic goal matrix. Staff would like to recommend the removal of 2 of the strategic goals because they have been completed. They are both in the civic enrichment value. One is the completion of the sports park, because we do have that completed at this time. And the second is the opening of pageant grounds, and although that is not yet completed, it is imminent, so we do recommend that that be removed from the matrix. I'm going to go ahead and speak briefly to the other matrix that we provided you. That is the 2013 work plan, because it is important to take these 2 documents in together in context. And this is the list to which the mayor referred in the state of the town, the list of 30-some priority issues, many of which, those that have a yes in the second column, are ones that are actually on the strategic goal matrix. Others are issues that have arisen over the course of the year, have been identified as priorities either by the council, by the community, by outside factors, or other reasons that they have been put on the work plan list. And staff wanted to bring this forward to you just to note, as the mayor did say during her remarks, that it is a long list. There are many complex and challenging issues on the list, and we wanted to see if the council wanted to provide any guidance on whether some of the issues could be delayed or until later in the year. This particular matrix goes through fall, doesn't include early winter, which is still this year. One reason that we wanted to bring this forward is because there are so many complex and challenging issues. It's the case often that only 1 or 2 can be considered by the council on agendas. And with the remainder of the year, we have about 18 of those agendas left, and the council may want to take that into account. And so we are presenting both of these to you tonight for any direction you would like to give us.
And the only additional comment I would add to the work plan issues, of the 31 items listed, 20 of them involve CDD, Community Development Department, in the lead seat or the second seat. So that department in particular is carrying a disproportionate load for these challenging issues.
And I might add one more thing that I just thought of. Food trucks is one of the issues that's on the list, and it's one of the issues that staff suggested if there are any that are postponed, that one could be. And I did want to share with council, the reason it was on the list in the first place for this time period is that last year, Music in the Park requested to have food trucks at the event through the summer, and the town conducted a pilot project with food trucks. And we have been informed by Music in the Park folks that they do not intend to pursue food trucks this year, so it isn't a time-sensitive issue at this point in time.
Are you done?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, questions of staff from council? Ms. McNutt.
Thank you, Mayor. Not a question, but a comment. So as I was going through the matrix, this is the 3rd time that we've had it worked with the matrix in this form. I know there were strategic goals prior to that, but this, I think, it lays it out so crisply. And it is disheartening when you see the same things carry over year after year after year. And I think one of the problems is that some of the items that are listed as strategic goals are really, they're not action items that you can do and check off and say that they're done. They're more ongoing principles like ensuring ongoing fiscal stability or pursuing technology solutions. So one suggestion that I would have is that we clean up the boxes at the bottom and take out those that are general in that way, really try to get it focused on very specific tasks that have a start and a middle and an end that we can check off. And there may be some, as we go through the discussion over on the work plan, that we want to move over onto strategic goals. But so for specifically under good governance, I think we should take off increasing availability of online services, unless there is a specific project focused on for this year or next year, pursuing technology solutions under fiscal stability, ongoing fiscal stability, the economic vitality strategy. Those don't seem specific enough to me. Under civic engagement, I'm not sure why the arts master plan is still there. It seems like that's kind of taking care of itself and is just rolling along. And then also enhancing efforts to encourage community members to participate. I think they're pretty good at that. So, again, unless we have something specific that we want to do, I would leave on increased communication with the community, because I do feel, and I'd be happy to talk about that more specifically, but I do feel that our website in particular needs some attention, and that there could be some additional outreach things that we could do to respond to some of the concerns by the community that they're not getting information as timely as they would like. So I'll stop there.
Further discussion? Ms. Jensen.
This is actually a question. It's pretty fundamental about this same chart. I want to understand the structure. If something's on the top in a column, does that mean it's top priority, or are they all equally weighted?
There is no prioritization within the columns.
Other questions? Ms. Jensen? All right. Mr. Brzezinski.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with Councilwoman McNutt's orientation to take the general, non-specific, and perhaps recategorize that as something different, because you're right. I mean, it looks like we've been at this for 3 years and very little has been accomplished. And then when you look at what we've got on the next page, there's an awful lot of work to do. So I think I would hate to lose these in concept, but I would be more than willing to see these adjusted, and recategorized so that they're seen as like philosophical orientation or general orientation versus those specific tasks that we have in front of us. As far as a couple that I'm concerned about that I don't see in the work plan, under quality public infrastructure, the last one in that column, of course, we're looking at Almond Grove. We're going to try to do something with Almond Grove. But the Complete Streets program, I don't think we've talked about that for a while. And I think that that's something that we should put another focus on. It's so significant to us, particularly as development takes place, where we can look at our streets not as mere thoroughfares for cars to go from point A to point B in as quick a fashion as possible, but how do we recreate our streets to develop them as complete streets, pedestrian and bicycle friendly streets, and again with the degree of opportunities we may have in the developments that are proposed in the mayor's state of the town. I'd hate to lose the financial leverage that could bring to us if we include that in the plan. The other thing I'm concerned about is under public safety. It's the last box under public safety. I think one of the major issues that we hear so much from our constituents on is the question of volume and speeds of traffic. And we have indicated that over the long haul in doing this the strategic planning, we are going to do some things that are significant for reducing speeds of traffic, making the streets safer. I think if there's any real danger that we experience, it's because there are people who actually drive too fast on our streets for conditions. that impacts then the ability of parents to let their kids ride or walk to school on their bikes, and I guess ride their bikes and walk to school, actually. But to change that matrix in some way so that we're starting to look at how we're going to impact speeds of traffic as we reconfigure streets. Our presenter from Blossom Hill, in commenting on the changes that took place near Blossom Hill Park on that configuration, has really altered the character of the traffic in that corridor. And I've heard it from so many neighbors out there that the sidewalk infrastructure, the improved lane signage, the pedestrian crosswalk that's signed and lighted, and then the speed indicators that are up eastbound and westbound on Blossom Hill, have, from the perspective of people who are living in your neighborhood, have changed the character out there from this speedway to something that's a little more hospitable. And I'm thinking that, for very little money, we should be looking at these kinds of mitigations throughout town. And I, not having seen anything in our work plan that indicates that we're going to try to do some traffic mitigations beyond what we've got right now, I would recommend that we take another look at that.
All right, further discussion? Ms. Jensen.
Thank you, Mayor. Being new to this, I have trouble with sort of echoing Councilwoman McNutt's comments about there's things on here that are very general. It almost seems like the first matrix, to me, there's things that overlap. They don't necessarily fit in the category that they're in. If you look at the work plan, you could put bullets under certain of the things. So it almost seems to me that to make it more of a workable document, it ought to be somehow combined, or else just say what the work plan is and use the strategic goals on the top, because it's hard for me to figure out what exactly the strategic goals are. I can figure out the work plan. That's pretty easy. But I can't figure out how they go with the strategic goals. So I guess I'm just saying that this overall matrix isn't particularly helpful to me. And I don't know if that's true of other people or if it's just me. But the work plan should just sort of indicate which strategic goal it falls under, or is it civic enrichment, public safety, infrastructure, et cetera, rather than doing the boxes, which to me are not necessarily related to the work plan or understandable as a specific goal.
Further discussion? Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Spector. Echoing some of the comments that were previously made, looking at the columns, it does appear that there are some things that are very general. And I just went and I circled the ones that are actual projects, such as update the Los Gatos Boulevard plan. I like Councilmember McNutt's comments about increasing the communication with the community via a better web presence. I like in column 3, the fiscal stability, explore ways to maximize the availability and usage of the downtown parking resources. I think that's important, and I think that's something that's can be explored. And then in column 4, the Almond Grove streets and the complete streets. Looking at those 5 things, I think that's plenty of work off of this spreadsheet matrix. So that's where I would be going, and I would stay away from all the general categories. And I think the work plan looks like it's pretty well laid out. It does have some overlap of some of those things I just discussed. So keeping in mind for the future, if we're going to update this strategic goals, again, remove more of the general items, maybe put more of the work plan issues that we have looking forward beyond 2013, perhaps the ones that we don't get to in 2013, and add those to this strategic goals and remove the general items. Thank you.
Okay, Council, anything further? Ms. McNutt?
Just one thing on the work plan, on the disposable bags policy that's coming up for a study session in April. The City of San Jose is moving ahead with exploring styrofoam packaging used in restaurants. And I'm just wondering, and I'll know more when I go to the Recycling Commission meeting next week, but I'm wondering if we could or should couple that with disposable bags. They seem very similar to me. You're laughing. You don't want to do that?
And I'm going to respond.
Okay. That was all.
Let me just respond to Ms. McNutt. Actually, in meeting with staff, styrofoam was on the list, but there were so many challenging issues that at our very last meeting, we dumped styrofoam. But actually, I totally agree that they really go hand in hand in many ways. Before we get to staff, any other questions? Mr. Brzezinski.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The question for staff is this: is this workable? I mean, in terms of what you understand, Mr. Manager, about capacity for staff to accomplish this, we've got this laundry list, and I agree. I could pass on food trucks. There are probably a number of others in here that we could see as a lower priority, and then there are so many that are significant, that are already on the schedule, that are going to be complicated no matter what we do. I wonder if we shouldn't take a quick read of this, maybe not necessarily tonight, but a quick read and say, what are the things that we know they're elective in nature rather than those things that are required for us to get accomplished. I don't say we take anything off the list, but then prioritize. I mean, when you're looking at this, everything's equal, except for the fact that they've got a timed sequence to them. So that's my question. Realistic or not?
I think this is going to stretch the capacity of the organization and the council meetings available, given the number of complex issues and the challenging nature of the discussions that will emerge from those. If any one item is delayed due to applicant requesting a delay, because there's another of applicant-driven schedules here, to council requested continuance, or if it's going to the planning commission, a planning commission requested continuance, or due to staff illness, absence, or a new project like firearms coming into the mix. I'd say it's a very precarious balance of a schedule we've laid out here, and the flexibility we have is moving things to occur later. What we've presented to the mayor and to the council obviously has more specificity closer in, and it gets more general as we go out, because it's hard to predict how all the prior issues will be finally resolved. Will it take one meeting, 2 meetings, or what? So I think where we get flexibility is things rolling later, but knowing we're trying to accomplish as much as possible. And the toughest issues, as I identified, are with CDD, obviously, for many challenging ones. We have asterisked in the chart those that we believe might be the easiest delay because there's no regulatory requirement to deal with them earlier. Some that you might think could have been asterisked, like the emergency shelter zoning and multifamily CUPs down towards the bottom. We're under a housing element obligation to adopt those by the fall, so we couldn't just say move those to 2014. So the asterisks are where we've tried to guide, where we think we probably need the safety mechanisms of a couple of those moving back if other workloads demand on this list. The other suggestion we had was, based on your comments tonight, we might look at how do we take the specific work plan then and start to roll back to the strategic goals matrix, since we're trying to approach it both generally and specifically. The strategic goals matrix, this is our third one, I believe. It's still an evolving tool for us, for those jurisdictions who have used it effectively. It's a big chart on the wall, and when something new comes up that's unscheduled, part of the public discussion is, well, what gets dropped or delayed? Firearms could have been that. AHA's going back through a second round process could have led to that discussion. And again, it's not dropping the projects, it's the scheduling of the projects. So I view the strategic goals as a continuous tool we're going to keep improving. I think based on the comments of a number of council members, we have a number of things that are so general. Let's start making it more specific and measurable. And maybe the work list, the work plan is the way to get there, because that's so specific and discrete.
All right, council. Then let me jump in on this. I agree with everything that every council person has said as it relates to the town of Los Gatos core values. And I drew circles around all of them that I thought were so general, one would never know exactly what one is supposed to do. So I find, I agree that the general ones, and maybe what I think is general, the vice mayor does not, but I think the general ones are useless. There are a number, and a lot of the general ones are under good governance. A lot of these have been, or a number of these have been completed. So I do see a challenge with this chart at the strategic goals and below. And again, I agree with everything everybody else has said. I do think that the work plan gives a good definition of what one should be doing. With regard to the asterisks, which quite frankly I didn't pay attention to till you just said it, I agree that those could be moved down. The food trucks could be moved out. The only one I have a little bit of concern about moving out with the asterisks is the alcohol and entertainment, just because it just seems to come up, maybe not this year, but historically seems to come up a lot. Further discussion. Ms. Jensen.
I just wanted to agree with the mayor on the alcohol and entertainment. Speaking for my former planning commission colleagues, it's a huge challenge for the planning commission not to have an alcohol and entertainment policy in place. The other asterisk that struck me was my bugaboo, the definition of community benefit. So the earlier discussion was the design of a potential change to the Winchester-Lark Avenue intersection, which is going to be fueled by an Albright development or not. And I think what Mr. Capurso was referring to was whether the developer would pay for any portion of that improvement or not, which would be related to community benefit. So to the extent that we need to have a definition of what that is, it's affecting various projects that are coming forward. So I actually think it's important.
Thank you. All right, further discussion? All right, then I'm going to, I guess I should first ask, we've now had questions. Is there anybody, I don't have any cards, but is there anybody in the audience who would like to address us on this item? Noting that no one is coming forward, I will close the public testimony portion of this agenda item. And if you'll, noting on a first page of our staff report, there are 3 items that we are recommended to weigh in on. And let me start with Mr. Larson. Assuming that, are these still what you want us to weigh in on? Do you have enough direction? For example, on number 3, what are you looking for at this juncture?
I believe an actual motion and vote would be required on items 1 and 2, recommendations 1 and 2, to accept the mid-year budget performance and status report, as well as authorizing the budget adjustments, since those become tools to get us through the fiscal year. For number 3, I think you have provided a consensual direction, as we often do at study sessions. Formal motions aren't needed for that. What I think we would take as direction is to clean up the strategic goals matrix, take off the general items and the completed items. Maybe if there are 1 or 2 projects that take a very general and make it specific, make sure it's reflected on there. look at those strategic goals that aren't in any way reflected on the work plan, such as the two that Councilmember Przynski mentioned, and identify for council what, when, and how will those be addressed in the 2-year window of the strategic goal, and then look at the work plan items. Are there those that can add specificity to the strategic goals? And I'll use firearms as a good example. That will be as time-consuming of a project over the next year and a half with the research, the policy recommendations, the community dialogue, consideration of a moratorium and the like. It will be as time-consuming as some of the strategic goals. Maybe it should be reflected that it is one of the priorities for the year, for the 2-year cycle.
All right, well then I am looking for a motion on numbers 1 and 2. Mr. Vice Mayor.
All right, well, I'm going to move to accept the fiscal year 2012-13 mid-year budget performance and status report, including the fiscal year 2012 and 13 financial projections, and authorize the budget adjustments as recommended in the attached second quarter budget performance report, attachment 1.
We have a motion. We have a second.
Second.
All right, motion is second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Meeting adjourned.